The Prime Minister, the police chief and the phone call. Scott Morrison under fire over an investigation involving a sitting minister. Britain's Labor leader refuses to apologise to Jewish voters as the country's chief rabbi hits out at his handling of anti-Semitism. A deadly earthquake brings down buildings in Albania, leaving families trapped in the rubble. And calls for Westpac executives to front a parliamentary inquiry into the money laundering scandal.
This is SBS World News with Darren Mara.
Good evening. The Prime Minister has been accused of crossing a line after making a phone call to the New South Wales Police Commissioner about an investigation involving embattled Energy Minister Angus Taylor. It's drawn criticism not just from the opposition but from former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, who says it's a call he would not have made.
A scandal sparked by the Energy Minister, now directly involving the Prime Minister.
Finally drawn attention away from this Minister with a focus now on the Prime Minister.
And drawing criticism from his predecessor.
Being blunt about it, it's a call that I would not have made.
The call made by Mr Morrison to the New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller about an investigation involving one of his own.
I spoke to the Police Commissioner because I needed to know to exercise my responsibilities both to this House and under the ministerial standards.
Police launched Strike Force Garrard over allegations around a forged document. Earlier this year, the Minister's office circulated the document, later revealed to be doctored to attack the Lord Mayor of Sydney's travel. Mr Taylor claimed the cost of interstate and overseas travel for councillors amounted to almost $16 million. The actual cost, just under $6,000.
Where he got the numbers from is a complete mystery, and he's going to have to fess up one day or the other.
This isn't a tragedy, this is a farce, and that's why this minister should go.
Mr Taylor denies any wrongdoing, the Prime Minister still standing by his side as he comes under growing pressure for his phone call with Commissioner Fuller.
How on earth was it appropriate for you as Prime Minister to speak to the New South Wales Police Commissioner about the substance of an investigation on the very day it was launched?
He knows he's the one, Mr Speaker, who comes into this place with trumped up claims because at the end of the day, he's got nothing.
Both Mr Morrison and Commissioner Fuller have defended the call, saying there was nothing untoward about the conversation.
The Prime Minister didn't ask me any questions that were inappropriate. He didn't ask for anything that was inappropriate, and I'm comfortable with the discussion that we had that ran over a few minutes.
The pair have a past. As Treasurer, Mr Morrison was Mr Fuller's neighbour.
Our relationship is a professional one.
It is always critically important that in any police inquiry, particularly something that involves a politician, that the police are and are seen to be acting entirely free of any political influence.
Police hope to have the investigation wrapped up by next week. Pablo Vinales, SBS World News.
There's been an extraordinary intervention in the British election campaign, with the UK's chief rabbi claiming the Jewish community is gripped by anxiety at the prospect of a Labor victory. While Jeremy Corbyn insists there's no place for anti-Semitism in the party, he's refused to apologise for Labor's handling of the issue.
For years now, allegations of anti-Semitism within Labor have sparked furious debate. At the centre of it all is Jeremy Corbyn. The latest row unfolding as the leader launched his party's race and faith manifesto.
There is no place whatsoever for anti-Semitism in any shape or form or in any place whatsoever in modern Britain, and under a Labour government it will not be tolerated in any form whatsoever. I want to make that clear.
Mr Corbyn was responding to the UK's chief rabbi, who claims that the overwhelming majority of British Jews are gripped by anxiety at the prospect of a Labor victory, and says the party's insistence it has investigated anti-Semitism properly is a mendacious fiction. His comments have been backed by other senior rabbis.
For the first time, Jews have been looking over their shoulders. It's just something we're not used to. I'm born in Britain, I'm a British citizen. You know, Britain is my home, my values. Never has a party made me feel different.
Several high-profile Labor figures have been suspended over anti-Semitism, while 2 female Jewish MPs have left the party.
I mean, wouldn't you like to take this opportunity tonight to apologise to the British Jewish community for what's happened?
What I'll say is this. I am determined that our society will be safe for people of all faiths. I don't want anyone to be feeling insecure in our society, and our government will protect every community against the abuse they receive on the streets, on the trains, or in any other form of life.
Try one more time.
No, hang on a minute, Andrew.
Labor's Jewish supporters say concerns are overblown.
For the Chief Rabbi to be attacking the Labour Party in this particular way and attacking our leader is unjustified and unfair, and I am bitterly, bitterly disappointed that he's done that.
I think the Chief Rabbi has every right to speak out and protect his flock. I just think he's wrong.
The unusual campaign intervention could help Boris Johnson.
Yeah, look, all I will say about that, I do think it is a very serious business when the Chief Rabbi speaks as he does. I've never known anything like it, and clearly, it is a failure of leadership on the part of the Labour leader that he has not been able to stamp out this virus in the Labour Party.
But Labor isn't the only party facing accusations of institutionalised discrimination, with the Conservatives coming under criticism for not doing enough to tackle Islamophobia. The Muslim Council of Britain says the Tories have a blind spot on the issue and have been too slow to act.
We're having an inquiry into all forms of prejudice and
you're having a broad inquiry, but not one into the specific allegations of Islamophobia.
And because if anybody is convicted, if anybody is done for Islamophobia or indeed any other prejudice or discrimination in the Conservative Party, they are out first bounce.
Racism and religion, topics both major parties would rather not be discussing 2 weeks out from Election Day. In London, Ben Lewis, SBS World News.
At least 21 people have died after the most powerful earthquake to strike Albania in decades left dozens trapped under fallen buildings. The 6.4 magnitude tremor hit just 34 kilometres northwest of the capital Tirana, with the majority of those killed living in the nearby coastal cities.
The most powerful earthquake to hit Albania in decades, and one of its youngest victims reached too late by rescuers, desperately searching for survivors in northern Albania. For those waiting for news, these moments were simply unbearable. The earth shook while many people were still asleep, but by day the full scale of the quake's impact was clear to see. Throughout the early hours, teams had scoured the rubble to find anyone trapped. By dawn, heavy lifting equipment was moved into the worst affected areas.
When the quake hit, the lights went off. We couldn't see anything. Everything fell apart and crumbled.
I don't remember such a quake since 1979. It's never occurred like this.
Some buildings were almost completely destroyed in the quake and hundreds of people were injured. Albania's Prime Minister visited a makeshift camp in Thumane.
The quake left us unsheltered. Everything is destroyed, the flats, windows, everything, and we cannot live there anymore.
The 6.4 magnitude quake was felt far beyond Albania's border. The government has declared Wednesday a day of mourning for the country's many victims.
France's defence minister has vowed the country will not turn its back on terrorism, despite a helicopter crash in Mali, which killed 13 French soldiers near the borders of Burkina Faso and Niger. The troops were searching in darkness for Islamist militants when 2 military choppers collided. There were no survivors. It's the biggest loss of French troops in a single day for more than 30 years. The US Congress has invited President Donald Trump to attend the next round of its impeachment hearings next month. It comes as Mr. Trump appeared to distance himself from his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, whose activities in Ukraine are at the centre of the impeachment probe.
Butter, I wish you a lot of luck.
A
a long-standing Thanksgiving tradition.
I hereby grant you a full and complete pardon.
The president saving 2 turkeys named Bread and Butter from ending up on a dinner table and taking the time to roast efforts to impeach him.
It seems the Democrats are accusing me of being too soft on turkey. But Bread and Butter, I should note that unlike previous witnesses, you and I have actually met.
In the midst of the festivities, President Trump telling broadcaster Bill O'Reilly that he didn't know what Rudy Giuliani was doing in Ukraine.
So you didn't direct him to go to Ukraine to do anything or put any heat on
No, I
him?
didn't direct him, but he is a warrior. Rudy's a warrior. Rudy went. He possibly saw something, but you have to understand, Rudy has other people that he represents.
No, I know.
That's at odds with the transcript of Mr. Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president when he repeatedly asked Mr. Zelensky to speak with Mr. Giuliani. It's also at odds with this testimony last week from the US ambassador to the EU.
I worked with Mr. Rudy Giuliani on Ukraine matters at the express direction of the president.
Ukraine's president still tight-lipped on the saga.
Не дуже люблю коментувати цю історію. Ви ж читали все. Все, що було дуже секретно, всі відверто дуже почитали. І ми не втручаємось в вибори, в геополітику Сполучених Штатів Америки. У нас є наша незалежна Україна.
Today, the House Judiciary Committee announcing it will hold public impeachment hearings next week. Chairman Gerald Nadler inviting the president to participate or stop complaining. But he isn't listening.
A witch hunt, the same as before, and a lot of bad things are happening to them. Because you see what's happening in the polls? Everybody said, that's really bullshit.
The president's reception in sharp contrast to the one his wife received in Baltimore. The city her husband called a rat-infested mess. School students jeering as the First Lady tried to spread her message about drug addiction. It's the first time Mrs. Trump has been publicly booed at a solo event. Jessica Washington, SBS World News.
Mexico's foreign ministry says it will quickly seek a high-level meeting with US State Department officials after President Trump said during a radio interview that he would designate Mexican drug cartels as terrorist groups. Under US law, once a group is designated as a terrorist organisation, its members cannot enter the country and may be deported. It's also illegal for anyone in the United States to knowingly offer support. The Mexican foreign minister tweeted that Mexico would never tolerate any move that would violate its national sovereignty. Well, coming up next, which capital city has the least affordable rents? Unlikely allies united in their push for a republic. And 3 men wrongfully convicted of murder free after 36 years. What led to their release?
Tonight at 7:30 on SBS World Movies, The Journey. While on SBS, Tony Robinson's World by Rail. And at 8:30, discover the dexterity of the adolescent mind in Child Genius Australia.
I've got a story to tell you. Fraud, extortion, attempted murder. A big story.
And the Emmy goes to The Handmaid's Tale!
It's beautiful and it's perfect, but it's unsettling, and she's like that in life too.
She's a cultural and literary rock star. Margaret Atwood!
Greetings, Earthlings.
Is that important to you? Fun?
If you're not having fun, then what is it?
You walk by her studio and you can hear her giggling away as she's writing.
Margaret Atwood, A Word is Power. Sunday 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
I drive a lot. I build stuff, pull things, push things, and I hit things. And then I carry stuff.
What do you do again?
I drive a Hilux.
Now including Toyota's Safety Sense package as standard. Oh, what a feeling. Toyota.
When you've got Australia's most accurate free property price predictor from ANZ, you'll know which homes are worth your time and which ones are not. search ANZ Buy Ready.
Want thicker looking hair? Try OGX Biotin and Collagen from Chemist Warehouse. The powerful formula creates the appearance of thicker, fuller hair. OGX Biotin and Collagen shampoo and conditioner are $9.99 each. Live, look, feel fabulous at Chemist Warehouse.
Your spare pair. Your glare pair. I left them on a chair pair. Your new style of hair pair. Your ex's over there pair. When they're beyond repair pair. The look and debonair pair. The flying through the air pair. I can't find them anywhere pair. We could all use a second pair. At Specsavers, get 2 designer pairs, no gap, from the $199 single vision range when you're with selected health funds.
¿Tu papá en qué trabaja?
No sé, creo que tiene un negocio de importaciones, de cosas electrónicas, algo así.
¿Tu mamá también es judía?
No, peor que eso. Era comunista.
Así es que usted quiere ser soldado del ejército de Chile.
A trabajar.
Mary and Mike, the most explosive couple in Sudamérica.
Alors tout ce que je peux vous dire, c'est de tenir bon.
You know his face. Now know his name. A focus on Vincent Cassel concludes with The Emperor of Paris, Friday 9:30 on SBS World Movies and On Demand.
For SBS News anywhere, anytime, download the app or go to sbsnews.com.au.
More than 20,000 homes across Sydney and the Blue Mountains are still without power more than 24 hours after intense storms hit the city. The wild weather knocked down hundreds of trees and power lines, leaving a massive trail of destruction.
20-metre-tall trees pulled clean from the ground, cars crushed and dozens of streets still blocked.
Bucket down and strong wind, and then suddenly I came out, I saw everything is here. Disaster.
It was a brief but brutal 8 minutes. 3 powerful storm cells swept through the city. Winds up to 100 kilometres per hour.
The wind just blew through it's just like a tornado.
Like a hurricane.
The North Shore copping the brunt of the storm. The roof of this shopping centre pulled off and multiple schools forced to close. Neelam Fulwaria was inside when this tree slammed into her home.
I was so scared and everybody said you can't go inside because it's not safe anymore.
She's not sure when she'll be allowed back in, a concern of many of those affected.
We're in a really precarious time of the season, in the storm season. It's not even summer yet, and we've got Christmas coming up and all the tradies go on holidays, so whatever they put on the roof is going to have to last a couple of months.
Ausgrid says it's the largest power outage seen in years.
The New South Wales SES says they've been called out to over 900 jobs across Sydney, cleaning up debris and trees like these ones. And with the sheer number of power lines still down, it's expected thousands will go again tonight without power.
We had 120 crews out last night working tirelessly to try and restore some normalcy back into the community. We've got a further 70 crews out today.
And with more storms expected for the weekend, the clean-up may have only just begun. Amelia Dunn, SBS World News.
Police are investigating the suspicious death of a woman whose body was found on Sydney's Upper North Shore. Police were called to a unit in the suburb of Pymble after concerns were raised for the woman's welfare. There are reports her body was discovered in a freezer. The woman is believed to be a Chinese national in her 30s. Police are investigating if her husband has fled to China with their 2 children. There are calls for Westpac executives to front a parliamentary inquiry to explain how its money laundering scandal happened. It comes amid greater scrutiny of executive pay and corporate governance, as SBS finance editor Ricardo Gonçalves explains.
What is the cost to shareholders of alleged ineffective corporate governance? Well, some would argue when it comes to Westpac, it's billions of dollars, whereby its shares were trading at about $30 before Austrac's claims of financial crime wrongdoing started to come to light. Now, many are speaking up, while some corporates are making the first move. With Australia's banks in the spotlight, some are going on the front foot. Today, ANZ moved to ease investor concern that it may be blindsided by a damaging scandal. In a statement to the ASX, ANZ said it's not aware of any impending litigation from Austrac, and while the bank is reviewing its money transfer systems and processes, it has found no material issues to date. It was prompted by allegations Westpac had breached anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing laws 23 million times.
Now we see another governance failure which is looking at another hefty penalty. This all comes off shareholder value, so shareholders are paying for this.
While CEO Brian Hartzer and Chairman Lindsay Maxted will resign as a result, the federal opposition wants more answers, calling for Westpac to front the House of Representatives Economics Committee sooner rather than later.
We can't wait for the next hearings next year when Westpac's scheduled to come before us.
As for having banking executives and regulators and others come before a parliamentary committee, we see no problem with that.
The Greens want to see a cap of bank executive pay.
Because international experience says it works.
Executive pay is at the forefront of the minds of many shareholders as they seek greater accountability of corporate leaders.
This is hitting shareholders, so they're acutely aware and they are increasingly taking action through their voices, through their votes on annual general meetings of companies.
While Westpac shareholders will have their voices heard on December the 12th, shareholders of Harvey Norman today slapped the retailer's board with a second strike against its remuneration report, prompting a spill of the board. But only 11% supported that move, avoiding a boardroom clear-out.
The Harvey Norman issue is the independent oversight of the directors over management.
And Woolworths management is taking responsibility for its wages underpayment scandal, which saw some staff miss out on $300 million in pay over the last 9 years. CEO Brad Banducci confirmed today he is foregoing his short-term bonus of $2.6 million, while Chairman Gordon Cairns is taking a 20% reduction in his board fee. The Reserve Bank Governor says quantitative easing measures would be considered in Australia, but not until the official interest rate falls to 0.25%. Quantitative easing, or QE, is when the central bank pumps money into the economy to increase supply and encourage lending. Speaking in Sydney last night, Philip Lowe said if it were to happen, it would go down the route of purchasing government bonds.
If we were moving away from, rather than towards our goals for both full employment and inflation, the purchase of government securities would be on the agenda of the Reserve Bank Board. In this world, I would hope other public policy options were also on the country's agenda.
Now, the Australian dollar fell against the US today. The Governor's comments prompted Westpac's Global Head of Economics, Bill Evans, to review his interest rate call. He's now added another to his forecasts at 0.25%, plus a round of quantitative easing at the end of next year. Further talk of rate cuts boosted our share market to a record high. The 200 rose nearly 1%. Westpac fell, Telstra rose as it reaffirmed its earnings guidance, and BHP did well thanks to a rise in commodity prices. That is the day in finance.
Well, a new report has highlighted the worsening plight of low-income earners when it comes to housing costs. The latest Rental Affordability Index shows even in the cheapest areas of Australia, those on New Start are paying nearly half of their income in rent.
Academic Lachlan McGowan may live in the nation's centre of power and influence, but it's a daily struggle to make ends meet for the Canberra New Start recipient.
Rent, food and bills is about what we can afford. We maybe have $20 left a fortnight for anything luxury, and luxury for us includes stuff like ordering takeaway instead of cooking.
The latest Rental Affordability Index paints a bleak picture for unemployed Australians like the 27-year-old.
There's a genuine crisis within this country, facing hundreds of thousands of low-income individuals, either on New Start or on low-income wages.
In the ACT, a single person on a New Start allowance spends 115% of their income on rent, less than in Sydney, but more than in other bigger capitals like Melbourne, Perth and Brisbane.
Even in the cheapest place in Australia, in regional South Australia, someone on Newstart needs to pay 47% of their income to afford a one-bedroom unit. Now, that's impossible as well.
Overall, Hobart comes in as the most expensive for renters, a finding that comes as no surprise to Apple Isle residents.
The prices are just disgusting.
A lot of people I know started out paying around $280, $300 a week for a nice three-bedroom home, and now they're paying upwards of $450.
Very, very expensive when you're on the pension.
Adelaide next on the Rental Unaffordability Index.
It's been very expensive for a while.
It's definitely not affordable, especially in the long run.
The report finds that such is the rental squeeze. Job seekers and low-income earners are increasingly being forced further and further away from city centres in the hunt for more affordable housing, further hampering their ability to find employment and education.
If you push them so far out of the city, they wouldn't even have enough resources to go to a job interview. So instead of setting them up for success, we are trapping them into poverty.
And only adding to the housing pressure, new figures showing residential construction has recorded its 5th straight decline, down more than 10% over the past year. Gareth Boreham, SBS World News.
Malcolm Turnbull says it's crazy and absurd that MPs and senators must be Australian citizens to sit in the nation's parliament, and yet the Queen remains our head of state. 20 years on from the failed referendum campaign, the former Prime Minister says a two-step vote is the only chance the nation has to evolve into a republic.
Under the disapproving gaze of King George V.
Oh, Albo, how are you, mate? Good to see you. Good.
An unlikely alliance leads a royal revolt.
We love this country so much, we demand that our head of state is one of us as well.
20 years after he captained the failed Republic campaign.
It's not something that I would expect to be revisited in a hurry.
He was the Prime Minister who broke this nation's heart.
Malcolm Turnbull says the movement must be ready to try again.
Your Majesty.
At the end of the Queen's reign.
We cannot afford to have another referendum where we are fighting on two fronts.
Calling for two separate votes. The first to decide if Australians should elect their head of state or if one should be appointed by the Parliament.
And we need to thrash that out for months. Let people go uphill and down dale about it, have a good old Barney and come to a decision.
The second, a final deciding ballot.
I honestly think a plebiscite that just said, do you want to be a republic or not, would get trashed.
While the opposition leader agrees it's time for Australians to have their own head of state, Anthony Albanese believes there are other aspects of the nation's architecture in more urgent need of repair.
Our first priority has to be the recognition of first Australians in our Constitution.
We don't want to replace one form of white-fella legal architecture with another.
Republicans regrouping in the King's Hall of Old Parliament House, just beyond the symbolic front steps.
Well, may we say, God save the Queen. Because nothing will save the Governor-General.
Hoping to stage a modern-day dismissal of their own.
This is a fantastic place to do it, to be reminded of why we want to be a republic.
Brett Mason, SBS World News.
The UN Environment Agency says current targets to cut carbon emissions fall far short of what's needed to prevent disastrous climate change. It says emissions need to drop by more than 7% each year for the next decade. In Zimbabwe, climate change-linked drought is having a dramatic impact on day-to-day life and the famous Victoria Falls.
When the Zambezi River is in full flow, you can see why the explorer David Livingstone called it a view for the angels. But look at the falls now. This is what southern Africa's prolonged drought means. The volume of water is down by 2/3.
Here we are at this viewpoint. Yes. It's called the Horseshoe Falls viewpoint, but
there's no falls.
Yes, Steve, the change in the low falls, they're becoming more frequent. Who knows, maybe 1 year there will be no fall completely, no water.
2 hours north of Victoria Falls is Hwangi National Park, a land dying of thirst. Hwangi has the largest concentration of elephants in all of Africa.
I don't know if you can see, but there's a group of elephants just over there. Now, each elephant needs about 300 kilograms of food a day. In a drought like this, and you can see how dry it is, that means they're constantly on the move in a desperate search for food.
Drought is a killer. 200 elephants have starved to death in the last 2 months. Solar pumps stop waterholes drying out, but in drought conditions, the elephant population here is unsustainable.
Climate change is real. Trees are destroyed, vegetation is lost. Those are the issues.
Beyond the park boundary, subsistence farmers are also struggling to survive in a land dry as dust. Prolonged drought is also an urban crisis. 500,000 people live in sprawling Mbari in Harare. This place simply isn't equipped to cope with an environmental crisis. They've had no piped water here for months. Cholera and typhoid are a looming threat. And look what happens at sunset. Zimbabwe's power supplies have been crippled by a lack of hydropower. Mbari is enveloped in darkness.
One family, they usually cut the room.
Zimbabweans have endured years of misrule and economic collapse. Drought makes it even harder to see a way out.
Yvonne, in the dark at night, when there's no power, there's no lights, do you and the kids feel safe here?
No, we don't feel safe because some of the people are being robbed at night. There are thieves all over this community. So we don't feel safe if there's no electricity.
Yvonne Mugombe and 9 family members huddle together by the light of a candle. Zimbabwe's present is grim. Its future could be much worse.
At least 39 people have been killed in flooding in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Torrential rain caused landslides in the capital, Kinshasa, destroying homes, roads and bridges. Floods are not unusual in the city of almost 12 million people, and poor infrastructure means the results are often devastating. Authorities say rescue workers are continuing to search for bodies. The inquiry into the assassination of a Maltese investigative journalist has moved closer to the centre of power. Amid public outrage, a top aide to Malta's Prime Minister and 2 senior government ministers have stepped down. Police are questioning 2 of them, and the Prime Minister himself is facing pressure to quit.
Protesters outside Malta's Parliament confronting Prime Minister Joseph Muscat. A man who has enjoyed years of widespread popularity, now held in contempt. Protesters and opposition politicians are demanding his resignation, saying he's mishandled the probe into the 2017 murder of journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia. But for now, Mr Muscat is standing his ground.
There was a secret vote by the Labor parliamentary group where I was given a unanimous vote of confidence. I will therefore continue to make the decisions which I need to make in the national interest. The country needs stability.
It's been unstable since this. Ms Caruana Galizia investigated and exposed corruption at the highest levels, and she paid with her life. Today, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Keith Schembri, quit. He has been questioned by police and his house raided. The Economy Minister, Chris Cardona, too, has been quizzed. He and the Tourism Minister, Conrad Mitzi, have also stepped down. Daphne Caruana Galizia had alleged in her reporting that Mr Schembri and Mr Mitzi had financially benefited from secretive shell companies. Protests demanding political accountability for the journalist's death have intensified in recent days after a series of breakthroughs in the case, most notably the arrest of a suspected middleman. 3 people are awaiting trial for carrying out the murder. Police are now trying to get to the bottom of who ordered it. Lynn Evelyn, SBS World News.
It's nearly 2 months since the US pulled its troops from northeast Syria, paving the way for a Turkish offensive. And during that time, almost 200,000 people have been displaced. With international aid agencies forced to withdraw, conditions inside the makeshift camps built for displaced Kurds are worsening.
Class should be in session now. But here in Hasaka, the school has become a temporary shelter for displaced people. In one classroom, we meet Ibrahim Hassan. The Kurdish father of 5 tells us he was forced to flee his home in Ras Al Ain with his children when the Turkish military operation began.
They took everything, and after they took all our belongings, they set it on fire and burned it all.
Just days before the offensive began, Ibrahim's children had posed smiling with U.S. troops patrolling the area. He says America's presence gave him a false sense of security. Then suddenly, they were gone.
Do you feel that you trust the Americans still? هل تثق للأمريكان؟
أكيد لا.
أكيد لا.
أكيد لا.
Definitely not.
It's a sentiment we found shared by many here. Nearly 200,000 people have been displaced by Turkey's offensive. Hundreds of their homes have been damaged or looted. Local authorities are now trying to move them out of the schools so that class can start again and into hastily built camps like this one. Conditions are bleak and resources are scarce. Because of the security situation, international aid agencies have had to pull out, leaving the Kurds with no one to rely on but themselves. Camp organizers say there are 3,000 people living here now, with more arriving every day.
Almost everyone in this camp is from the town of Ras Al Ain, and Ras Al Ain used to be around 75% Kurdish. Now, though, we're told there are just a handful of Kurds left, and the people here believe that the ultimate goal of this Turkish offensive is to essentially push the Kurds out of this area completely and change the ethnic makeup of it forever.
Turkey has done little to alleviate their fears. As the Kurds have poured out of these areas, Arabs have been bussed in. Syrian refugees who Turkish authorities claim are originally from these areas. In the Christian village of Tal Nasser, we find more families from Ras Al Ain, sheltering in the ruins of a destroyed church. Will you try to go home? I asked these women. There's no home to go to, they reply. ISIS cleansed this area of Christians when it was in control. They have yet to return. Now the village provides refuge for another people, forced from their homes with no sense of a possible return.
A British High Court judge has banned protesters from demonstrating outside a Birmingham primary school against LGBTIQ+ relationships being taught in the classroom. With relationship classes soon to be rolled out in all British primary schools, the case is being viewed as a major legal test.
This is a paedophilia agenda.
One of the protests held near Anderton Park School. This filming was used in evidence in the case. Demonstrations were held objecting to lessons teaching about LGBT relationships. The judge said what pupils were actually being taught were sometimes being grossly misrepresented. Videos made allegations against teachers, including that they'd brought convicted paedophiles into the school. Today, the judge said that wasn't true. The school's head welcomed the ruling that protests within the exclusion zone would now be permanently banned.
You know, in a strange way, I'm glad we were part of this, to be part of a decision which does affect all schools, because it was always much bigger than Anderton Park, and we all need to learn from this.
Relationship education for primary school pupils will be compulsory in England from September 2020. The way it's taught is being left to the discretion of head teachers.
But he fails to
Immediately after the hearing, one of the lead protesters gave his reaction to the judgment.
what they are being taught is that there is nothing wrong with this and that it is okay to be gay and it is okay to marry the same sex. Well, like it or not, we do not accept this and will not accept this.
Tonight it's known that protests cannot now take place directly outside these school gates. The judge found that teachers, pupils and local residents had been badly affected. But some objectors have vowed to continue outside the exclusion zone.
An American grandfather has told of the moment his 18-month-old granddaughter fell to her death from an upper deck of a cruise ship. Salvatore Aneo is fighting a charge of negligent homicide and says his colour blindness may have been a factor in not being able to see that a window was open when he sat the toddler on a handrail. 18-month-old Chloe Wiegand died in July while on a family holiday. Her parents were also on board the boat and have asked for Puerto Rican authorities not to prosecute.
I saw her fall. I saw her fall the whole way down. I saw her fall, and I was just in disbelief. I was like, oh my God. And then I just remember screaming that I thought there was glass.
But Puerto Rican prosecutors say the evidence will prove Aneo is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. 3 men wrongly convicted of murder in the US state of Maryland have been freed after 36 years in jail. They were sentenced to life imprisonment in 1984 for the murder of a 14-year-old boy at a Baltimore school, but always maintained their innocence.
I've been always dreaming of this for this day.
Even the most exuberant images of tears and hugs fail to capture the magnitude of this moment. Alfred Chestnut, Ransom Watkins and Andrew Stewart, free men after 36 years of being imprisoned for a crime a Maryland judge says they did not commit.
We went through hell. It wasn't easy. You see us out here, we're smiling. We're happy that we're free, but we got a lot to fix.
Their exoneration making headlines today, just as they're arrested back in 1983 when they were just 16 years old, arrested on Thanksgiving morning.
DeWitt Duckett was shot in a second-floor hall at...
This old WBAL-TV newscast reporting on the murder of a 14-year-old Baltimore teenager killed at school for his Georgetown University jacket. But prosecutors now say police reports reveal witnesses identified another shooter who later died. The boys were convicted even after Chestnut's mother showed police a receipt for a Georgetown jacket they found in her son's closet. It was Chestnut who pushed the state's attorney for Baltimore City to review the case.
It's a tragedy that these men had 36 years of their life stolen from them.
It's unreal. This opportunity that was given to us is unreal.
Well, coming up next, how do you measure the heart rate of the world's largest creature without using restraint? And Back to the Future, the Boomers usher in a new era with a former coach.
Is there anything you love more than maths?
Mummy.
Right answer.
The next stage is coming, and our child geniuses knuckle down for the toughest round yet.
Mathematics!
But despite the pressure,
You're going to fight till the end.
a strong camaraderie is beginning to form.
Only girls have got them all right.
Really?
Hi.
Hello. I don't deserve to go on compared to her.
You're such a gentleman.
Child Genius Australia, tonight 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
The American dream is dead.
Boom. I don't give a who you are. I'll fight you in the damn street right now.
Okay.
You know who Michael Moore is, don't you, Betty? The film director? He's filming me right now.
I'm here to make a citizen's arrest of the governor. I've turned into this kind of crazy optimist.
Welcome to the revolution.
Michael Moore season continues with Where to Invade Next. Tuesday 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
Please help Mercy Ships provide free surgery, medical aid and community building projects to the world's poorest people. It takes as little as $25 per month to help end unimaginable suffering. Visit mercyships.org.au to make your donation.
Don't let hay fever ruin your day. Try Telfast from Chemist Warehouse. It gives fast, non-drowsy relief from hay fever allergies. Telfast 180mg 70 tablets are $29.99. Live, look, feel well at Chemist Warehouse.
Good
Guys, Black Friday sale is on now. A Samsung 8.5 kilo washer only $5.95. 27% off an LG 65-inch 4K TV. 29% off a soundbar. 15% off Weber barbecues. Plus a Bosch dishwasher only $5.95. Stores open late Thursday and Friday only at The Good Guys.
Switching to the NBN Access Network is something most Australians have to do. To help get the most from your experience, there are a few things that you can talk to your provider about. Evening, girls.
Hi, Brendan.
First, check things like how many devices will be connected and how they'll be used in the busy time between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. Your provider can then help select the right speed plan for you. And when you connect, talk to your provider to get help with the setup, like where to put your Wi-Fi modem. Check, select, connect.
Just $25 can restore sight and keep Fred moments happening. Donate to the Fred Hollows Foundation today.
Turn on to SBS World Movies any night at 7:30 and be transported.
I do have a story. Very good story.
The 7:30 movie, every night on SBS World Movies.
I have decided to treat your arrival here as a sign. Ivor, the Boneless, have ordered the invasion of Scandinavia. In this world, you have to be so careful.
I don't want to be careful.
Those are coming.
Vikings starts 11th of December on SBS and on demand.
Well, it wasn't easy, but for the first time, scientists have measured the heart rate of a blue whale, the world's largest creature. The team used non-invasive suction cups to attach sensors near the whale's flipper. They found the massive mammal can survive with just 2 beats per minute when it plunges under the ocean's surface looking for food. Blue whales can weigh up to 200 tonnes, so scientists are very keen to find out what life is like when you're that big. Time for the Day in Sport now with Lucy Zelch. And Lucy, Australia's new basketball coach, he's got some lofty ambitions.
He certainly does, Darren. Good evening to you. Incoming Boomers coach Brett Brown has set his sights on a gold medal at next year's Tokyo Olympics. It's hoped the Philadelphia 76ers mentor can entice the likes of Ben Simmons to commit to the tournament. Brown's second stint in the role has been endorsed by outgoing coach Andre Lemanis.
The Boomers have finished fourth in their last 2 major tournaments. Brett Brown wants to take them 3 steps higher at the Tokyo Olympics.
We're going to win a gold medal. I completely understand the magnitude of that statement, but that will be my message to our team.
The American eager to repay Basketball Australia.
I doubt very much I would be sitting in the seat that I now hold here in Philadelphia and a head coach in the NBA had it not been for my background in Australia.
It's hoped the Philadelphia 76ers mentor will usher Ben Simmons into the fold.
For him to be with a coach who knows him and is comfortable with and works with him day to day, I mean, there's no doubt that relationship's going to be strong.
His proximity to US-based stars seen as a major positive.
It could be a team that's made up of 10 or 11 NBA players, and so he's over there coaching them on a daily basis.
Scoffing at suggestions of soured relations with certain players, outgoing coach Andre Lemanis has fully endorsed the change.
Some relationships that are stronger than others, but at the end of the day, I think we all really respect what we brought to the table. New energy, new ideas, and perhaps a little bit of a fresh view on the whole thing would be good for the group.
Brown previously served as Boomers coach between 2009 and 2012. He's hinted a new-look coaching staff will best suit his plans.
The existing coaching staff that I brought in the London Olympic Games in 2012, I thought did a fantastic job.
Joel Spreadborough, SBS World News.
Wild Oats 11 navigator Ian Murray is confident last year's Line Honours winner will be ready for the 75th instalment of the Great Ocean Race. The Super Maxi is undergoing a global repair job after a recent mishap left it badly damaged.
The Sydney to Hobart celebrates its 75th staging with the 4th largest fleet in history. 164 yachts are expected to head south on Boxing Day. Defending Line Honours champion Wild Oats 11 is just happy to be taking part at all.
When we'd heard all those cracking noises and, there's 140 feet of mast flapping around, 15 miles off Terrigal, there was, a lot of concern that we wouldn't be in the race.
That Cabbage Tree Island race scare, a reminder to everyone that safety must always come first.
To finish first you must finish. So it'll be about surviving bad conditions, getting to the other side of that weather system, and then ultimately the race begins again.
Langman's naval group entry is a collaboration between France and Australia, arising out of the French company's successful bid to build 12 attack-class submarines for the Australian Navy.
We thought the first thing to do was to compete together in a Sydney-Hobart yacht race. So the collaboration between France and Australia is so much so that we've actually painted the two flags on the side of the naval group.
The 75th Sydney to Hobart race isn't all about the 5 Supermaxes and the international collaborations that helped to make the race possible. This boat, the Cat Winchar, was built in a London brewery in 1904. The oldest boat ever to compete in the Great Race survived the Cabbage Tree Island trial despite sustaining wheel and boom damage.
We've fixed all that, and so by the end of next week it should be ready for Hobart.
Despite the defending champion's troubled lead-up, caution will be thrown to the wind.
We won't be cautious. We'll give the boat everything she gets. We'll let her rip.
John Baldock, SBS World News.
The NRL has announced a $250,000 grant for a landmark study into the brain health of former players. The league has teamed up with Harvard Medical School to conduct a study described as one of the largest of its kind. The announcement comes 6 months after researchers found evidence of degenerative brain injuries in 2 former players. A number of ex-players have since committed to donating their brain to science. And NRL boss Todd Greenberg expects research to continue for decades.
It's a big moment for our sport today. This has been, as I said, nearly a year and a half in the making to get to this position today, that we can have a long-term investment in research for our players.
Meantime, Shane Flanagan will join St George Illawarra as an assistant coach next season. The 2016 Premiership winner returns following his deregistration last year. The International Olympic Committee will support tough sanctions on any Russian athletes guilty of data manipulation. WADA has deemed Russia's anti-doping agency non-compliant after inconsistencies were discovered in an investigation. Athlete sanctions could include a 4-year ban from major sporting events. Israel Folau says he could have been a Wallaby captain and is now demanding $14 million in compensation from Rugby Australia. The former Wallaby claims he would have been entitled to substantial post-playing career payments if he hadn't been sacked. Folau maintains he was unfairly dismissed after making controversial anti-gay comments on social media. Rugby Australia chief Raylene Castle has reportedly apologised to World Rugby bosses for the behaviour of the Wallabies squad at the World Cup. Organisers were less than impressed with several players and former coach Michael Cheika. Castle penning a letter addressing Cheika's frequent criticism of referees and the attitude of the squad. Australia's cricket coach Justin Langer says the team has remembered Phil Hughes today, 5 years on from the batsman's death. The Australian squad are in Adelaide for Friday's second test match against Pakistan. Langer said the team will toast Hughes' memory and remain mindful of how lucky they are to be playing the game they love.
Be playing cricket, representing our country, being in Adelaide, being at the Adelaide Oval. They're always nice reminders. I'm sure that's what Hughesy would like too. He's smiling down somewhere and going, just remember, you got it pretty good, you boys.
Langer also suggested Australia will start the second test unchanged from the win at the Gabba. And finally in sport, a remarkable goal from Juventus forward Paulo Dybala has seen the Italian giants topple Atletico Madrid and secure top spot in their Champions League group. The Argentinian finding the net from a near impossible angle to steal the headlines in Cristiano Ronaldo's 175th league appearance. Meantime, Jose Mourinho claimed his maiden home win as Spurs boss. A Harry Kane header completing a comeback from 2-0 down against Greek side Olympiacos. The win secures Spurs' place in the final 16. What an epic morning in the Champions League.
It was.
Darren, thanks so much. That's a Dane Sport.
Thanks, Liz. Coming up next, the weather and how do the Arias stack up when it comes to embracing diversity?
Next on SBS World Movies, The Journey. While on SBS, Tony Robinson's World by Rel. And at 8:30, discover the dexterity of the adolescent mind in Child Genius Australia.
Going somewhere, human? I've never never seen anything like that in my life. That's weird, eh? So this ghost, do it look anything like that?
That's a Pac-Man ghost.
Wellington Paranormal's back, baby.
Don't say that.
Sorry.
Wellington Paranormal starts tomorrow, 9:25 on SBS Viceland and on demand.
We saved $297 when we switched to Yui. Yui listened to how my life has changed. They definitely understood what my life is like now as a stay-at-home mum.
For an insurer that listens, think Yui. Call 13 Yui or go to yui.com.au.
Open up your eyes, then you realize here I stand with my everlasting love. Need you by my side, girl, you'll be my bride. You'll never be denied. Everlasting love, this love will last forever.
At Kmart, we believe in low prices for life.
How's things? How's business?
Yeah, it's great. We're killing it. It's terrible. I mean, we're kicking goals and it is flat. Like nothing is happening. Everything's...
Get on top of the ups and downs of business with ANZ's flexible cash flow solutions.
Looking for a multivitamin to support your general well-being? Try the Blackmores Multis range from Chemist Warehouse. The range supports energy production and memory function. Plus, each product is just $37.99. Live, look, feel well at Chemist Warehouse.
And I get 5 years cap price servicing with my new Corolla. Well, they're impressed.
Still feeling it? You will be when you get Corolla Hatch with 4.9% finance. Search Toyota Value. Oh, what a feeling. Toyota.
Revitive Ultrasound is drug-free and uses ultrasound technology to deliver high-frequency sound waves to muscles, tendons and ligaments, relieving pain and assist healing of soft tissue injuries. Visit revitive.com.au or these retailers for special offers. Revitive Ultrasound. Get more out of life.
And the Emmy goes to The Handmaid's Tale!
It's beautiful and it's perfect, but it's unsettling, and she's like that in life too.
She's a cultural and literary rock star.
Margaret Atwood!
Greetings, Earthlings.
Is that important to you? Fun?
If you're not having fun, then what is it? You walk by her studio and you can hear her giggling away as she's writing.
Margaret Atwood. A word is power. Sunday 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
I've got a story to tell you. Fraud, extortion, attempted murder. A big story.
To the weather now. Cloud over the Tasman Sea is associated with a low pressure system with a cold front extending towards the southeast Queensland coast. Further south, patchy low cloud is visible across southern Victoria and Tasmania. In the major centres, sunny in Sydney, Adelaide and Canberra, cloudy in Brisbane, early showers in Hobart, partly cloudy in Melbourne. Looking further afield, a few showers in Auckland, partly cloudy in Christchurch and Noumea, showers in Nadi and rain in Tahiti. In Southeast Asia, partly cloudy in Bangkok, a few showers in Jakarta and Phnom Penh, thunder in Kuala Lumpur. Further north now, sunny in Beijing, rain in Hanoi, partly cloudy in Hong Kong, drizzle in Taipei, also drizzle in Tokyo. Heading west, showers in Baghdad and Beirut, fog for Delhi, rain in Islamabad, partly cloudy in Jerusalem and sunny in Mumbai. Up to Europe, rain in London and Rome, cloudy in Madrid and also in Moscow, a few showers in Paris. To Africa, sunny in Cairo, Casablanca and Dakar, thunder in Johannesburg and a few showers for Nairobi. South America, rain in Asuncion, partly cloudy in Buenos Aires, a few showers in Panama City and Rio de Janeiro. And lastly, for North America, rain in Washington DC, showers in LA, partly cloudy in Vancouver, sunny in Mexico City. The 32nd ARIA Music Awards are underway in Sydney tonight. SBS World News reporter Charlotte Lamb was on the red carpet.
This year's ARIA Awards are set to be a true reflection of the modern Australian music scene. From the performers to the nominees, diversity is taking centre stage. In fact, industry experts hailed this year's event as one of the most diverse they've seen yet. Earlier, I caught up with Zambian singer-songwriter Sampa the Great, who was nominated for 2 awards. This is Sampa the Great in her home country Zambia, where she says she feels most like herself.
24 years, fantastic, young veteran, new classic.
But the artist, who now lives in Melbourne, says her heritage was overlooked when she first started making a name for herself.
Yo, Melbourne.
She says she was touted as an Australian, with rarely any mention of her home country.
I am Zambian, and I always will be, regardless of what narrative was written for me.
As she wraps up a sold-out European tour, tonight she's up for 2 awards. Through her debut album, The Return, she says she's reclaiming her roots and telling her story in her own words.
Anyone who is of the diaspora or has had trouble and has a journey with where they're from, it's important to note your strides, document your strides, whether small, or big.
Adelaide rapper TK Maidza is also nominated for her song Awake.
Late night, probably awake. I mean, the song that's nominated was just a cool song that I thought was just a cool song, but it wasn't really meant to be like a whole thing.
Her success built on a growing demand for suburban hip-hop.
This is not a manufactured pop thing. This is artists who have actually got something to say that's very true and very personal, and that's what makes them so compelling.
They're also cultivating something new, so it's not just about bringing stuff over from where your parents come from, but also about the new kind of subcultural mixing and blending that's happening.
Contemporary music reflecting a contemporary Australia. And tonight, vocal group Human Nature will mark their 30th year in showbiz by being inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame.
Recapping our top stories now, and the Prime Minister Scott Morrison has defended himself against accusations of interference after he called New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller seeking information on a fraud investigation into Energy Minister Angus Taylor. At least 21 people are dead, and rescue crews continue to scour for families trapped in the rubble of an earthquake that struck Albania. The 6.4 magnitude quake is the most powerful to strike the country in decades. Britain's Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn is refusing to apologise for his handling of accusations by the UK's chief rabbi that the party is anti-Semitic. And the latest rental affordability index shows New Start recipients are paying out half of their income in rent, and Hobart has become the nation's most expensive rental market. That's the world this Wednesday. We'll have news updates throughout the evening on SBS and another bulletin after tonight's episode of Years and Years. The SBS News website has all the latest stories, and you can get news anywhere, anytime with the SBS News app. From the team, I'm Darren Mara. Good night.